So welcome to the Classkick math training. I am an Algebra 1 high school teacher. I've been using Classkick for about 5 years. It's been extremely powerful in my classroom. I'm a huge ed tech person, so I love doing games and whatnot with students, but Classkick by far I think has been the thing that has made it the easiest for me to teach, and also I think the thing that helps my students have the most kind of self-advocacy over their own education and whatnot. So we're gonna go ahead and go over quite a bit of different things. If you would like to ask a question, you can type in chat. You can just wait for me to pause and then just take yourself off mute, whatever that you would like to do. I am going to record the session. However, I am going to edit out anybody's pictures or anything else that is on there. So it'll only be your voice should you decide to talk in there. So real quick, I'm going to have us this time join. I have kind of almost, I'm going to use Classkick kind of a little bit of as a PowerPoint presentation. Just so that we can kind of get all on the right thing. So I'm going to have us join using, well actually, I'm going to have us join real quick, and I'm going to have you join without signing in. So you're just going to, I'm going to give you a class code in a second, and then I want you to join by just typing in your first name, no last name, please. So let me go ahead and go out of here so I can show you where that is. Okay, so go ahead and go to classkick.com and you're going to type in this code. I am going to send out the video again. It'll also be on my YouTube channel, and you're going to get a whole bunch of information at the end of this assignment today. There's a link that has a whole bunch of other information and information about my YouTube channel and whatnot. So I'm going to give us a second. Actually, I'm going to go change into a different window so I can see you guys logging in a little faster. Okay, so please remember that anytime that you give students a code and you have them just type their name and press enter, that is going to create a basic account. And I am going to go over just very briefly the difference between basic and pro. If you are at all interested in using pro, I suggest that you get started with it earlier, just because you're going to want all your kids to get set up correctly. You can't switch from a basic student can't be changed to a pro. They'll still have their information, but they can only access it one code at a time. So if you're at all interested in using pro, I do encourage you to do so.
What website are you on, Kimberly?
I'm sorry. We're on just going to classkick.com. And then you're gonna, so let me go over here. Can somebody write down the code real quick so I can just maneuver and not have to look it up again? So on regular Classkick, if you're having students log in with codes, and especially for basic accounts, this is how you would have them log in. So you would go log in and then student, and then you would have them type in the code that we had. Oops. And then it'll immediately ask them for their name. Thank you. And whatnot. Okay, so that's where we're logging in from. Oh, good. Doug is here. One of the science people. Hi, Doug. Okay. So is everybody logged in? Everybody logged in.
Can you put up the code again, please? Oh, it's on the chat.
It's on the chat.
Thank you.
I'm not logged in and I'm having difficulties here.
Yeah, so we are going to log, and it doesn't actually matter too much if you did pro. This time I didn't give people like a whole portfolio stuff to look at, so I just am going to have people do basic. You can do either one, honestly. It doesn't matter. And then who said that they weren't able to log in?
I did. I use Classkick all the time, and I think we just finished with summer school, so I don't know what's going on, but I can't get in.
You might need to clear
notifications and roster for my students. So am I in the wrong place?
Sorry, what was that?
I said I see all of my notifications and things we've created,
Yeah.
but I can't get into where you are.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so you need to log out first, and then
All right.
just go to the regular Classkick website and press login and student.
All righty.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to give us about another 10, 15 seconds to get logged in, and then I'll get going. I have a lot of stuff to go over, and so I'm super excited. Math is my favorite thing. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Bonnie is going to help monitor the chat, so if anybody needs help. I know also there's some of you that have a lot of experience and whatnot. I know I saw Doug is going to be joining us. He teaches science and has a ton of experience. So if there's things that you have questions about, or you just have a comment, please feel free to talk and whatnot, and we'll get it handled. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to go over very, very briefly is the difference between pro and basic. So a lot of teachers have been kind of asking questions about that. So I put a link in the assignment that'll kind of show you the difference and whatnot. The biggest thing is for a pro user is that you can have unlimited assignments and your students can have portfolios. So teachers that are pro, you're basically paying for a little bit of extra features. And one of those features is that your students can have a portfolio account. They don't have to, but a portfolio will allow students to access all of their assignments in one place without having to go for a code for each one. So there's also a little bit added security on portfolio because the students do also use a password to log in. But if you are interested in using Pro, I do recommend trying to get it set up early so that your students can start understanding what the portfolio looks like. I'm going to show you real quick what a portfolio looks like on the student side. So right here, this is a portfolio account that I have for my students. And so each one of these things is an assignment, and they would have access to any of them at any time. They also would get like feedback notifications for older assignments. They could see their grades, etc. So portfolio is just really helpful for them being able to see everything that they've ever done in their work. So if you want, you can jot down notes if you want. You do need to be on the pointer to be able to access any of those. So they're just slightly more advanced. Okay, I know a lot of teachers right now are also collaborating and sharing with each other. So before we get into everything, I do want you to know how you can share assignments with each other and also see my assignments. So if you click on this link, this is my shared assignment page. And there are probably hundreds of assignments in here. I teach Algebra 1, but I also have a third grader that I sometimes make assignments for him for his math, and we're gonna see some examples of that. There's also a whole bunch of warm-ups that I'm starting to put in there. So everybody has a shared assignment page. So one thing that you could do when you're sharing assignments with people is that you can just add it to your shared assignment page and just give them the link to that, or you can share it this other way that I'm about to show. A basic account can only have 20 assignments. Now that's 20 active assignments, meaning like in total. If you create an assignment and then delete it, that doesn't count towards your 20. So that is kind of like the limitation there. So if you're trying to share an assignment with somebody, what you would do is you would go within whatever assignment that it is, and you would just click up here in the top right corner and press share. And then you can just put share a copy with colleagues or add to my shared assignment page. So usually a lot of people, they would just copy in here and send the emails. You could also just send like a link or something like that. So if you wanted to post it on your Twitter or your Facebook or something like that, you don't have to do it the other way. Okay. Is everybody okay with how to share assignments real quick? Again, for Algebra 1, there's a whole ton of them there. There's also some that Classkick pushes out through their libraries. And yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna go back in here. Oh, sorry, one other thing. Okay, so there's a link here also that says connect with a Classkick teacher. If you click on that, it'll take you to a whole bunch. It's sorted by like grade level, and it'll take you to a whole bunch of people that are like Classkick coaches, and a lot of them have a assignment library that you can access if you want more assignments or just to kind of get some different ideas. They also have their Twitter information and Instagram there, so it can be super helpful. Okay, so one of the things that is very powerful with Classkick is the ability to handle notes. So one thing is while you're teaching in your class, especially before we get all the way into this, how many of you are going to be starting the year online? So go ahead and type online if you're going to be starting the year online in the chat, please. Yeah, a whole bunch of people, right? So lots of us are going to be starting online, and one of the things that can be difficult when you are teaching is trying to provide students with notes. But one thing that you can do in order to do that, and let me make sure what page you guys are on. We're on page 4. So if you want to follow along with where I'm at page 4 right now. I have some people that are hybrid or in person, or a little bit in person with some online. So one thing that you can do when you're typing with notes is if you are in the edit view, you can actually write on the screen, and actually the screen that I'm using isn't a touch screen because I projected from the wrong one here. But if you type on the main screen, it'll still show up on everybody's screen however that you are writing. So one of the most powerful things that you can do, especially with math, is you could be, if you have like an iPad or something like that, and again, my handwriting is going to look terrible because I'm doing it with my cursor for now, but you can type or just handwrite and have like a section of an assignment where you just have the notes included. So that's like something that is extremely helpful with kids. So not everything needs to be just used as an assignment. There's a lot of hacks around just showing students work. Here's another thing. So one of the things that kind of applies for this real quick is one of the lessons that you could do is if you were going to ask students to graph a point. So I'm going to ask everybody to graph the point 2, -3. So I want everybody to go ahead and graph the point 2, -3 on this screen.
Oh, mushrooms, ew. Yeah.
I'm gonna take a shower.
Okay, please make sure you're on mute real quick. Okay, so if everybody graphs the point to -3, and then I'm gonna get back where I was. Yeah, one of the things that I'm not going to go over it a whole ton in this training, but one of the things that's really helpful is if you can try to show the students from the student side. It is sometimes a little bit difficult to do so because, like, for example, I accidentally just pressed the back button on one of my screens since I'm having to toggle both ways. But it is really helpful to help them navigate by showing them what it looks like on that side. So if an example of how you can also use this, and this is just something that I do with my kids almost every year, is when we go over how to graph, I'll ask them to graph a point, and we know that precision is super important. So after they graph the point, I'll say, okay, well, if you're correct, it should be right here, right? Which normally in a class, like if you try to show kids how to graph at the front of the room, a lot of times they don't get exactly where you're saying it. So you can always have them graph a point and then put the answer, if it's a location-based thing, right on top of it. And it is helpful for them to be able to maneuver that way. So I'm gonna make sure everybody's on mute real quick, and then we'll keep going. Okay. Yeah, so if you want, so I'm writing right now on the main assignment page. So when I write on the main assignment page, that means that my writing will show up on everybody's page because I'm basically editing the whole assignment. So even in a regular classroom, like face-to-face, I actually usually write on the top screen of the Classkick assignment, and my kids will just view they'll view the notes just on their devices, which is really helpful for kids that have like attention problems or have problems with their vision. It helps them to kind of zero in. So we're going to look also, so math manipulatives are a huge thing. So I'm going to give you some examples here of things that you could do with manipulatives that are traditional or a little bit less traditional. So one thing that you can do, and I have a whole bunch of these like little bitmojis up in the side just to kind of draw your attention. So I basically just took a ton of different Classkick assignments and I just pulled like one screen from each one just to give you ideas of things that you could do with both. So we're going to go over manipulatives and then also fill in the blanks. And then I'm going to give some guidance and help on how to make them and how to make them very quickly and effectively, along with some other math practices that are really good. So one thing that you can do is if you were to slide off, and you can slide off this whole thing. So if you had something where you don't want them to use a fill in the blank, you can always use a manipulative just to cover up something, and so that they can see if their answer is correct, if it's really difficult. If you just want to give them that quick feedback. Here on slide 8, here's another thing that you can use manipulatives for, is you can have it where they put like key features on a graph, and it has all the different like manipulative, these things are acting as manipulatives and can be, can just be slid over onto the graph. Hold on real quick. I'm going to switch over to the student view so I can not actually be editing the assignment real quick. Okay.
Kimberly, can I pop in
Yes,
for a
ma'am.
second? So what, is there a reset button on this if the kids like get too crazy with the text boxes and manipulatives?
Yeah, there's like a undo button and whatnot. It won't start like all the way out from the beginning. So if you don't want to have, and sometimes kids will pull the manipulatives off of the screen. and then they just have to undo to put them back, but there's not like a complete reset. There is like a clear all button under the eraser, where if they had like text and writing everywhere, you can have them clear everything at one time, but it will not go back and put all the manipulatives in one place that they started from. So that is kind of like one caveat, but with them, and also it's important that students know that they need to, that to be able to access the manipulatives, they need to be on the pointer. So like here, I can have them label graphs by pulling things on, but it's only going to work if they're on the pointer. And that's a frequent thing that students misunderstand. And then sometimes teachers will end up sending like error checks to Classkick, and it's just that they need to be on a pointer. Here's another example. Sorting activities are great for manipulatives. This one thing that I could have added for it to be even better would be is if I added some letters to it, because then I could have put a fill in the blank box and have them be able to check their answers and have it auto graded. But sorting activities are another really good way that you can use Classkick manipulatives. Here's another thing. This is one of my favorite assignments, or pages from an assignment, is the student would start to go ahead and graph. And there's space here where they could solve. They can also type in their, what do you call it? Their different like answer responses. And let's see, this would have been a positive slope. So let's say up and to the right. So it can give them feedback. Oops. And then the y-intercept here is -3. So when the student is starting to graph, they can graph where it is. And then 5 and 2. I think there's 2 of us that have the same thing. And then once they have done that, they can actually pull, this is a manipulative image, where they can pull it off the top, and it can give them that precision of whether or not their answers are correct. So graphing can be really something difficult for kids to know, because there's so much with precision, and especially on that number line, a lot of times kids they might have placed the y-intercept at -5 because they might think that -3 is lower than -4. And so a lot of times it's hard to get them to see that precision, but you can always layer things on top of information. And again, where it won't let you completely reset, if I just press undo, it'll go ahead and put that manipulative back on top. Okay, so I'm going to pause. Yes, ma'am.
Are you going to show us how to make some of those? Because I've made a whole bunch of Classkicks, but I can't figure out the manipulatives. Yeah,
so for right now, I'm going to just show real quick how to, like, some different ideas, and then we're going to go into like some creating and how to do it faster, kind of all together. But I want you guys to have some ideas first. So yeah. So a couple more ideas. Domain and range. How many of you teach Algebra 1? If you are an Algebra 1 person, go ahead and put Algebra 1 or say yeah in the chat. Okay, I'm sure a lot of us know that domain and range is terrible when we're trying to work with students for Algebra 1, that they have a hard time understanding it. So one of the things that I do with students is I have these manipulatives, and they are, there's a way to make them clear. And if you guys remind me later, I'll show you how to also make them clear. Well, I can have them, one of the many ways that I teach domain and range is to have them to drag things onto their screen so they can see, okay, well, the left is the less side and the right is the greater side. So is this picture on the less side or the greater side of -2? So creating manipulatives that are transparent is also very powerful for kids because they can see through. Also, you probably noticed earlier that when I was trying to graph a point, I was kind of having a hard time getting it precisely where I wanted. On some of my assignments, I'll actually just put little manipulative points so that the kids can drag them on there, so they're not trying to, make their dots big enough and stuff like that. Sometimes I'll also just use a highlighter for that. but you can do that as well. Okay, is everybody okay there? Okay. Another thing, again, Classkick assignments, one of the best ways to do Classkick assignments is just to have one question per page. That's kind of the preferred way for you to be able to give them the most feedback. But, you know, sometimes kids just need to have things a little bit different. So a lot of times in my algebra class, we would do these like chain activities. And I hate cutting up little pieces of paper. It's super annoying. And they get all over the floor. So here I just have a chain where they would write. So here's the one that they start with. They would write their answer, whatever that it is. I don't want to solve that in my head right now. I probably should have had it memorized. But then they can put the next one and just drag the tiles to try to be able to show their, this would not be one where I would want them to show their work. It's just kind of like a more fun and interactive way to get them to be doing stuff, but probably after they've already gotten some practice going. Okay, so everybody okay on fill in the blank, on manipulatives, different things that you could do with manipulatives?
Can you make the manipulatives different shapes, like rectangles or hexagons or stars?
You can have, oh, actually, and thank you for saying that. I didn't clarify something earlier. So the manipulatives are always look to be square, like in the image, but you can make them any shape that you want. Shameless plug here of my little like resource pages is that some of my free resources, all the ones that are like 0, if you go to that first page where I link this, it didn't even connect in my brain, but like I have a whole bunch of math manipulatives in there for you. So like if you wanted to have like a protractor for geometry teachers and whatnot, I already have it in there both as an image that they can't move and then also as a manipulative that they can move, along with some of these other things. There's some algebra tiles, there's some coins, a whole bunch of different types of things. So when the student goes to actually move the image, it appears to be a square, right? But especially if you do it transparent, you know, it'll show up as any shape that you want. And I'm going to go over later, there's some programs where you can, if you want different shapes, there's a program on Microsoft that's called Paint 3D, and you just would have a transparent background, and then you can just make whatever shape or thing that you want. So on Classkick side, it always does it as a square, but if it's transparent, you can make it any shape that you want. Okay, is everybody okay there? Anybody have any other ideas for how to use manipulatives in a unique way? Because I definitely want to steal other people's ideas if you have something. Any cool ideas? No? Okay, so let's look at some fill in the blanks. Okay. And we'll get more into like how to actually make fill in the blanks and whatnot. There is there's some math keyboard stuff that you can use that can error check and whatnot. But we'll get into, as I said, I want to go through ideas of how to use it, and then I'll go through actually how to make them and answer some questions there. So simple thing you can always have where the students just put a single answer in. Again, I typically on assignments just toggle the answer keys on so that the kids can get quick feedback. Here's another one. A lot of times, especially in Algebra 1 or higher, there's like 2 different answers that kids can get. And so whatever you do, you'll have to have some type of convention that they can put in more than one answer. So like if you want to do 2,3, but understand that 2,3 is going to be different than 3,2. So just whatever convention that you have, make sure that it's something that's super easy, and then realize that the fill in the blanks, they're not like smart fill in the blanks. It doesn't know, for example, that 0.4 is the same as 2/5. Or that 0.4 is the same as 0.4. So if you are going to do something, especially where there's more than one answer, the first thing that you should do after you go over your notes with your kids is have them do that last question and put it on, that question is like the first question on your assignment, just so that they can practice whatever the format is to put both numbers in. Does that make sense? Because otherwise you'll have a whole bunch of kids that think that they're wrong, and they'll get real frustrated, especially if you also tell them that they need to round correctly. So just make sure that you have them practicing those formats early on. Yes.
Sorry. Do you want me to wait, or can I ask?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm completely brand new to Classkick, but from what I've heard and I'm seeing, my eyes are like 10 times as big. So the green dotted box, it self-checks. Is that what you? I'm trying to catch.
Yeah. So there's a part on Classkick where you can, so kids can put their own, like they can make their own text like this. Notice that there's no green dots on it. So if they type in anything like that, that's fine. But anywhere on their screen where you give them a space to respond, that's called a fill in the blank. And fill in the blanks are super powerful for numbers of reasons. They're like one of my favorite Classkick features. You can turn on the answer keys so that they can see if they're correct or not. And you'll see on some of these other pages that I use them everywhere. Also, one of the things that Classkick created for me, because I love them, and that's something for you to know, is especially, I know that they're really bombarded right now because there's so many new users, but this is a very responsive company. So I asked them a while back that I wanted to be able to see the results of what kids were saying. And so they built the thing where you can actually export anything that's in a fill in the blank into a Excel spreadsheet. So I use that quite a bit for if I need to do data analysis and I don't want to put it in some other, platform. I also do like surveys with the kids or ask them to do goals, and I will like export their answers and then kind of hold them accountable. Well, you said that, your goal was this and whatever that it is, but anything that is a fill in the blank, they can put in an answer. You can choose to put an answer that'll mark it correct or not, or you can just have it be like open-ended. So here's another way that I use them in my class. Like I'm a huge proponent of scaffolding. So when we teach students things like graphing inequalities, we know that a lot of the times students get kind of confused with what they're supposed to do. So sometimes they'll think that every time that it's a negative slope, they have to shade up or something. So this is me like already doing some of the work of graphing for them. And then I'm trying to get them to link the questions with what they're supposed to do. So is there a line underneath the symbol? They would say, yes. Okay, so should I connect it with a solid or a dotted line? So they would say, okay, I need to do solid. So it can help. Fill in the blanks can really kind of try to get those things that, we teach them the steps, but sometimes kids still don't, connect that. But you can use these a lot to try to get them to understand where that is. Let's see, I see there's some questions.
Yeah, Carol has a question. You see it?
Yeah, so little ones, the only way that fill in the blanks work is if they type in the text. So otherwise it's just operating as a different, it's just something that you would actually have to read. Classkick can't like read their handwriting and then interpret it. So they actually do have to type in. And that's another thing, is that you'll see that sometimes, and I just put a video out that talked about how one of the frequent errors that kids will do is that they'll make their own text box over it. You don't want them to do that, because then you can't export that box. So one of the powerful things about the fill in the blanks is that it can give them feedback. It can mark them correct or not. And you can also export their answer. You do have to have it type exactly as you want, and you can have more than one right answer. So you're not limited to one right answer, but every answer that is acceptable, you have to type in. So for example, 0.4 is not the same as 0.4, is not the same as 2/5. You have to type in every single version that you are willing to accept. And so that can be kind of, that can be kind of difficult. But just know that, especially if you're going to have where there's 2 answers and they can also be decimals, it can get really, really crazy with that. And so that's sometimes I'll just tell students, you're going to answer as a fraction, like as a improper fraction, just because there's less ways that you can write a fraction than there is for decimals, especially if the decimal is less than 1. Do I have any questions about that before going on?
Yeah, Maria has a question. I have a question too. So Maria's asking, will they get the feedback instantly, or do you have the ability to control when they get the answer?
Yeah, so they'll get, as long as the answer keys are toggled on, they'll get it immediately. There is not a way to like only have it on certain answers and not on other ones. That's like something that some people would like for Classkick to develop, but right now it's just either for the whole assignment or or you can toggle it on or off during that same assignment. Okay, so sometimes like if you see that kids are possibly like cheating or something like that, like somebody is kind of a caveat with this is that something that I like about it is that kids actually have to put in an answer to be able to see the answer key, right? So they have to have done something instead of just like when you put up the answer, oh, well, the answer for question 3 was 3.4. Like they have to actually type in something to be able to get the feedback. But again, if you start seeing that kids might be cheating or something like that, depending on how, like I usually tell the kids, especially if it's a practice assignment, that that's just hurting them, but you can always go and turn off the answer keys at that point. So there's sometimes it's a green box versus a red box. Sometimes people do like to hide the answers the whole time. With my students, honestly, I want them just to be getting the answers and getting the feedback so they keep moving. I find that since I've been using Classkick, I almost always have the answer keys toggled on, except for when they're multiple choice, because then the kids just, mess around with it too much. And a lot of times I find that kids do so much work because they get so much immediate feedback that to me, it's worth the like small bit of cheating or whatever that they get. And usually the kids, because I give them exit tickets every day and can get that, and they're super easy to grade. And so it just, it's kind of worth it for me to have the answer keys on. Okay, this is one of my favorite assignments. This one is not one that I can actually share because it is from a coworker of mine that sells on Teachers Pay Teachers, but quadratic formula, there's 5 million places for kids to go wrong. But what this does is that they have to put their answers in on each individual spot, and it's giving them a whole bunch of feedback as they're going through. And so when kids, start putting things in the wrong spot, you'll find that they're able to ask much clearer direction. It's a lot easier to know where the kid made a mistake instead of trying to toggle down. Also, for example, in this one, this is usually where they make the mistake. They'll usually put -11 because they'll think negative B, and -11, they'll still think it's -11, but they'll get some really quick feedback and be able to ask you more specific questions. So although kids are able to cheat more with the answer keys on to some degree, honestly, you'll find that, and I found that just that automatic feedback that I don't have to monitor, all of a sudden I'd see that kids would go. Also, a lot of times with math students, kids kind of sometimes think that they're going to be wrong, and so they'll just kind of slow down on their work. Whereas since this is giving them automatic feedback, kids will keep going, which is what we want them to do. We want them to be practicing. So I'm going to pause for a second to read or see if there's anything that I need to see. Yeah, kids are going to at times use things in ways that we don't want them. So if you're toggling them on, again, it's like one of those things where you have to kind of balance. So like on exit tickets, I do not have the answer keys toggled on ever, right? And on warm-ups, I don't toggle them on, because I want to be able to see the stuff. But I find that because I have a lot of accountability in my classroom around warm-ups and exit tickets, they don't really see the benefit of cheating on the regular assignment because it's not going to help them. They're not going to have that much time to do it on the exit ticket. to where they're going to cheat. And so I really think that just that automatic feedback is worth its weight in gold, and is one of the things that I love about Classkick. Plus, if you do a lot of feedback with kids, I guarantee you that you will get mentally tired of trying to like check in and see all the different answers. And so sometimes like toggling on the answer keys just helps me keep my brain, because I get super, super, super tired. And that's another thing that you can set up classroom norms about when you're going to be monitoring the screens, because there's times that I don't actually monitor and give feedback. There's times where I monitor a lot during warm-ups especially. But then on other parts of the assignment, I may not, and I might be working more with little like small groups and not helping as much. Here's an example that's for younger kid stuff. This is something I made for my son. So I know some people may not like the layout of this assignment necessarily, but it actually worked for Elijah. We do have some invisible zeros and stuff, but it's another thing where that he would just go through the different portions, and it gives him immediate feedback as to what he would be typing in. And so there's just another way that you could provide some scaffolding. And with my son, he gets like super annoyed when I like look over his shoulder. And so I find that when I use Classkick, he'll actually, even for this last year for his school, I just put they had their assignments on PDF, and I just put them into Classkick, and he was so much more willing to work. And he didn't get so frustrated. I do use Classkick as my main way of presentation, and I have for like the last 5 years. I use it all the time for warm-ups, exit tickets, tests. I'm going to go over even like how to use it. Even on my state scores and stuff have gone up consistently. And I think a lot of it is, I do use other things too. Like I'm a huge GimKit fan right now. If you haven't checked out GimKit, it's like the best thing ever as far as games, and Kahoot and Quizlet and all that type of stuff. But yeah, this is my main daily practice type of thing, all day, every day. And the kids actually really seem to like it quite a bit. So here's another example just for fill in the blanks of things that you can do. This is an assignment that I made for my son using like area models. I didn't check the answers on this because I just usually have him fill them in. So, you can, again, give some feedback. Notice that you don't have to give the same amount of points for everything. So like here, like the total answer would be worth more points, so that when I'm looking at my color coding that I can see. But again, if kids are completely lost, having extra boxes where they can fill things in helps give them a lot of feedback. So yeah, so Doug's saying that he uses it mainly for formative assessment. Doug is a science teacher, chemistry teacher, and I'm going to share a keyboard that he showed with me a while back. But yeah, he's a veteran Classkick user and whatnot. Another thing for people, especially if you're like an Algebra 2 teacher or something along those lines, is consider giving kids a way to get so like for something with systems of equations, especially if it has 3 variables, we know that we don't know if the kid is going to answer for Y first and then Z and then X, but they may not realize that they made a mistake until they have all 3, which is really, really cumbersome for the kids. And some of the kids, especially if they're math phobic, are just going to be like, whatever, I don't even care anymore. Like, I'm not going to redo it. So you might consider putting answers, especially if they're dependent upon each other. So either embedding more questions, or just like giving them an opportunity to check and see if part of their answers are correct. Again, that's going to give them more quick feedback, and also is going to make it more likely that they're not going to just give up. Okay, let me see. So is there any questions real quick before I go on to the next little part?
Carol has a question.
Okay, so Carol, So do you make your assignments and then import as PDF? I do that quite a bit. I use a decent amount of Teachers Pay Teachers. I do also make assignments in Classkick. Yeah, if you, all of your assignments are saved every single year. Now, if you're a basic user and you only have 20, I guess one of the ways that you could get around that would be to share them to somebody else and have them share back. But again, I really do think that having a pro account is worth it. You can download the assignments like to PDF, but you're going to lose. So if you're just trying to like keep under the 20, you're going to lose the fill in the blank. Like it'll show where it would have gone, but it's not going to have all the answers embedded anymore in it. Does that make sense, Carol?
Yes, it does. I'm just trying to figure out, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Because I'm trying to figure out, yes, we do have a pro account this year, but I'm just trying to think, sometimes you use an assignment 1 year from the next, sometimes you don't pull it out for another 3 years. And I'm just trying to figure out how to save my work. Because as you're saying, if I have it on Classkick, I have to pay, my district keeps paying for Classkick Pro. But then as you say, if I download it to my computer, I'm going to have to then recreate all of the action pieces.
I do not believe that Classkick, if you were pro and then you got your pro like taken away, I don't think that they delete your assignments. Just in general, they're a very giving company. They're not punitive like that I've ever experienced. I mean, I've been using it for 5 years. I actually have multiple Classkick assignments because when I first started using it, and I'm sure also when Doug first started using it, we didn't have folders. And folders are amazing now. So if you're gonna use Pro, please start with your folders and your organization early so it's not so difficult, because you have to kind of add one assignment per time. But anytime that I've had an issue where I wasn't pro for a while, they've never deleted my assignments. Yeah, so if you're putting a PDF in, you would just put the fill in the blank where the answer goes. Yeah, and they're an overly giving company in a lot of ways. Like even during the first part of the pandemic, they gave basically everybody pro accounts for free. They definitely are very reasonable. And if you have issues, they're going to be busy right now because there's so many people, but they are like a very ethically minded company in what they do. Okay, so
Nancy has a question, and I just want to mention real quick, I put in the chat, but I looked it up and it looks like they're giving a discount on their monthly subscription.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I wish I had bought it later.
Yeah.
So Matthew, and I think there was a couple more questions in the chat.
Okay, so I think I looked at some of them. I might have had them. Let me see real quick.
So Matthew's looking at, if you have, he was like, let me read it out. So he had a couple students. They needed to scroll down to see the rest. I eventually just drew an arrow to tell them to keep scrolling down. Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, so I don't try to write, I try to keep my assignments. I know there's been some people that have been asking like how many pixels the full page is. I only try to write in the screen of what they would view during the thing. I don't really want them to have to scroll down unless they just need extra space for work. So, typically that's what I try to do to get around that type of issue, because I don't want them to have to scroll down. I do try to have one question per page, but I try not to scroll when I'm creating it. I do sometimes create PDFs outside of Classkick, but most of the time I do a lot of my creation inside.
Hey, Kimberly.
Yes.
Quick question. On the teacher side, when you're checking assignments, does it also help to keep it at the top portion because that's what you can see? If they have to scroll, do you have to scroll?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one thing that if you're in the Facebook group, Barry Hoffman, who's a very frequent poster, one thing that he does with his kids is that he'll actually put a box, like he has them put their final answer in the box on a certain part of the page up in the right-hand corner every single time, so that if it's something where, you know, you don't necessarily want the kids to have to type in an answer, that he can always locate where their answers are. I use fill in the blanks all the time, so I don't really have to do that as much, but that's like another way. But yeah, I don't use the full Classkick page. Yeah. Okay. Any question?
Shannon had a question. I'm not sure if you answered it already, because I know you mentioned about the PDF, but she asked, once you put the PDF in, then do you put a fill in the blank box where the answer goes?
Yeah, no, I do. Yeah, and yeah, and you'll see in a lot of the different assignments that's just kind of like where, like for example, the last one that I had made for my son, or this one actually is not for my son, but like, yeah, there's little boxes for them to show their answer. And again, I just try to think of my placement as far as like if, how I'm going to get the feedback. But since I do a lot of auto grading, I don't really even need to see what they wrote, because I can tell by their score. If they have 3 points, it was correct. If they don't, then there was some type of issue. If everybody only has 2 out of 3, then I probably made a mistake. You know, but fill in the blank definitely, or fill in the boxes definitely takes off a lot of that stress from having to monitor all of that stuff. Okay.
Kimberly, I have a quick question, if you don't mind.
Yes, ma'am.
So in the fill in the box, you can put anything, right? So if the answer is X plus Y, whatever it is, if it's X squared.
Which this brings me to this other thing right here. So I put a link to Symbol Salad. This I got from Doug I think it was even just earlier last year. So this Symbol Salad, what it does is if you wanted to put like X squared plus 3, you could just put the superscript here. It automatically copies it to their what do you call it, clipboard. And so here I could do X squared plus 3, including if they type it in one of those little boxes, those fill in the blanks, it'll auto grade, which is awesome. Now again, remember that X squared plus 3 is different than 1X squared plus 3 is different than 3 plus 1X squared, all these things that are mathematically equivalent. But and that's where, if you're going to use these things a lot, you might want to have students like tell them that you want it in standard form, or, you know, however that you want, because you aren't going to want to write down 5 million different things. But that math keyboard is super, super helpful. And you can just have the students just pin it in Chrome. If you have things pinned in Chrome, then every single time that they open it, it will be right there for them. And they can just have it open in another window. Also, for those of you that are Windows users, real quick, if you press the Windows key, which is the one that has the little 4 boxes, and you put a period, it should open up with an emoji keyboard. And so you can then type in emojis, and mine you can see right here, it'll type in emojis and different little things if you want to add them. Some people use that for, especially for younger kids, for like helping them to find the assignments. If they can't read very well, you can always just say like, oh, find the heart, or find the little smiley face, to give them ways to find it. Yes, students love the little emoji keyboards and whatnot. So that's like another thing. But again, as far as for math symbols, I definitely recommend Symbol Salad, since it works across different things. Okay, so real quick, we're going to talk about making assignments quickly, and I want to show a bunch of stuff. Doug, can you remind me, are you a Mac person? Doug, are you a Mac person? So I'm going to go over some stuff that I know is true in Windows, but usually there's another Mac person in here or something that knows the same keys in Mac. But I'm not a Mac person. So if
I am a Mac person.
Thank you.
Yep, sorry,
so
I had to
yeah,
unmute.
you're good. So please feel free to share just completely, anybody that has suggestions on these places, feel free to interrupt me and just kind of get over. So we're gonna go over how to make assignments quickly, but one thing that I wanna show you first is how to snap your screens. So, sorry, there's somebody at my front door, so this is gonna be awkward. 1 minute, please. Okay, sorry, my friend's coming, or my son is coming back from his friend's house. So one second. Oh, wait. Yes, there you go. So you can, again, using that Windows key, you can press the Windows key and then the arrow left or the arrow right, and it'll move one of your windows to one side. You can then have something else open on the opposite side, and it will kind of organize it nicely. Yeah, it doesn't stop for Classkick. I keep on trying, but you know, it doesn't, life definitely doesn't stop. So that's one thing that you can kind of do within to kind of make your editing quicker. So I'm going to go ahead and open an assignment real quick, and we're going to kind of practice making some things. Yes, I will show it again. So, and if anybody, so if you're full screen, you can click on the banner. Oops. You can click just on the banner, make sure that it's selected, and you can press the Windows key and then the arrow left, and it'll make it so that it's small on the left-hand side. And usually it'll have like a thing where it'll show you, it'll give you some options to select for the right-hand side, but I can click the top of that one and then just say Windows right. And of course it has to act a little awkward, but it'll give you options of what can be on the other side. And the benefit of this is that if you want to have like a PDF or some type of thing in Word, or if you want to do some of your editing somewhere else, you can kind of go quickly back and forth. So you can see it two things at once. The other way that you can do it is if you just drag the screen to the either left wall or right wall, it'll also snap it in place like that. So here you can see I have 5 million accounts. Yeah, it's very useful for students. There's a whole bunch of different little hacks and stuff like that you can do. Okay, so I'm gonna create a new assignment. Okay, and I'm gonna pause for a second because my brain went out the window. In this training, I decided to put the notes like kind of on the screen. Okay, so one thing, so when you're entering assignment or putting in pictures, you can always upload from the computer. But one thing that I found is kind of more helpful, and I'm gonna kind of hack CUDA real quick. So, and this is not specific to high school, but one thing, instead of trying to upload assignments and then taking a certain part, sometimes what I'll do is I'll just have some type of worksheet open, and then I'm going to give you a shortcut, so you might want to write this down. I'm going to press the Windows key, the Shift key, and S, and it's going to allow me to snip a portion of the screen. Okay, sorry, my son is like letting everything go right now. And then you can just press paste real quick right into Classkick. Yeah, so it's another thing too, if students want to, instead of having to like, you know, do the putting the little picture thing over and over, they can just have their document like that. You can also still copy and paste, so Control-C and Control-V also work. But then I want to show you another shortcut, is if you press the Windows key and V, this is going to be your clipboard history. And so it will keep track of every single thing that you have copied or pasted. And so you could just have everything kind of already saved in there, and just, you would then just select whatever. So like this, I guess, was the code from earlier. It pastes it straight in there. And again, if I ever want to get to my history, you know, I can just get whatever stuff that I want, and it'll insert it. So if you don't want to be using this all the time to try to insert things, that copy paste is super, super helpful for doing so. And that's how I kind of will get a lot of the things in there. Doug, do you know the way to do it on Mac by chance?
I do. To do it on Mac, there's a green button in the top left. And if you click on that green button, then you can go ahead and have the capability then to do split screen.
Okay. Yeah, so clipboard history, to get to your clipboard history, you're gonna press the Windows key and then V. So it's, instead of control V for paste, you put Windows V, and then the first time it's gonna prompt you, do you wanna turn on your history, and you say yes, and then afterwards you can just use it all over the place, and it's super, super helpful, so you don't have to be going back and forth. And as I said, this is how I just steal random things all over the place to make it super fast. Are we okay? Is there any questions on that portion so far? Okay. Another thing that I will do a lot, because fill in the blanks are so time consuming. So especially if you saw that assignment where I was doing, not Pythagorean, but the quadratic formula, there was so many boxes, right? So one thing that you can do is, when you make your fill in the blanks, you can make a fill in the blank box, whatever size that you're gonna wanna have it be. And then if you know that you're going to want to have 1 point per question, it's going to be so annoying to try to make every single box that same size and then all worth 1 point whatnot. So what I'll do is I will just put in a blank first, and then I'll decide how many points that it's going to be. Including, like, let's say if there's like special words that are going to be repeated where I don't want to retype them out, I might even type in like multiple answers. For example, like, you know, kids write yes and Y for yes, and then no and N. Like, even though the answer may not be both yes and no, I'll sometimes just type them in because it's easier to delete things than to have to retype all the different possibilities. So one of the ways that you can get quicker at making fill in the blanks is to already have them set up with the possible answers, or at least to just put a space and then add the points. And then when you're going to copy the fill in the blank, it's easiest to come over to this corner right here and then press just Control Copy and Control Paste. And so that you don't have to keep on resizing it, especially if you're going to use them a lot all over the place to give feedback. Is everybody okay there? Yes? Okay, again, remember that when you're doing fill in the blank, that this is not a smart thing that understands which numbers are equivalent. So if you're gonna say 0.4, that's gonna be different than 0.4, which is gonna be different than 2/5. So it would register any of these answers as being correct, but you just need to know that there's gonna be potentially a lot of different ways to write it, and that it's just doing it basically off of the text. Okay, so when we're talking about manipulatives, and I can't remember which one of us was asking about manipulatives, but so please make sure that if I don't answer your question fully, that you just chime in and let me know. So when you're doing manipulatives, you would just select from the file here, wherever that you have it. And here I had made some like transparent manipulatives for something. I've been trying to make some stuff for some SPED things for kids to be able to focus a little bit. but you can select, and I think somebody asked me earlier, can manipulatives be other shapes than squares? Well, the snipping tool only creates a square or a rectangle, but the shape that you're snipping on the inside can be whatever shape that it is. And so you can also insert more than one manipulative at the same time. So so if I wanted to do this one, I can do a whole bunch, and I can even assign it to more than one page if I want to. So you can do that. If you, so once you're done, you can go ahead and insert them, and it will insert them. These manipulatives that I just put in there, you can see that they're transparent. And in a second, I'm going to show you how to do transparent manipulatives. Have I used the lasso? I haven't used the lasso tool on it. That I remember, because a lot of the times, like if I'm going to make something transparent, so I want to show you guys, there's a website right here. If you go to LunaPic, and they do have a Chrome extension as well, but if you go to LunaPic, you can upload any picture that you want, and then you can ask it to remove the background from it. I know Mr. Hoffman also had another website that he uses that'll just take off the background. So if I want a manipulative to be a different shape, I will, if I already have the image, I'll just go in there like this. Or this is my one of my favorite programs on Windows is called 3D or Paint 3D, and I'll show you real quick. Let me drag it up here. So on Paint 3D, sorry, I think my computer might be frozen temporarily. Okay, 1 second. So on Paint 3D, you can change the canvas. Oh, okay. You can change the canvas, but my zoom controls are right in the way. You can change the canvas up here to a transparent canvas. And then this would be a good thing, like if you wanted to like have words that you want them to like label on a graph, you don't want it to be white in the background. If you just use a transparent background or transparent canvas, and you can do the shapes and however that you want. I also have a ton of different manipulatives or other shapes that I've just snipped in that link where it has the different 00, those if you just want to copy them. So it says, when doing manipulatives, is it always the order that you add things? So add the answer first and then add manipulative to, yeah, so you would want the manipulative on top. So you do need to do some type of ordering. Classkick right now, whatever order you put it in, that's where it's stuck, unless you go back and like copy and paste to get it into like a different order. But you can just do control copy and control paste. Yeah, you can also do that remove.bg thing is another way that you can do it. That LunaPic thing, I might talk about it in the other one, but you can make like little GIF images, which I do. I'll put like a little like phrase, like if I'm like, so my husband's Nigerian, and so if you say the phrase wahala, that means you're being difficult or troublesome. And so sometimes I'll put like a GIF with my picture like oscillating with the word wahala or something like that. So it's just kind of a nice little editing tool that you can use. Okay, any questions about manipulatives? Or I want to make sure actually before, when you're doing manipulatives, this is how you tell that it's a manipulative. You can see in the background that it has that like little 2 square thing. Whereas if I put something in like this is actually, or I'm going to take a picture over here. So I'm going to just copy that over here, right? this is a picture, and you can tell because there's not that little symbol in the right-hand corner. So, and this only shows up on the teacher side, but if you're not sure if it's a picture or a manipulative, you can tell right there. Remember, or let's see, here's a pop quiz question. If a student cannot move a manipulative, what's wrong? So if a student cannot move a manipulative, what are they doing wrong, or what do they need to do? Do you guys remember? They need to be on the pointer. Yep. So on your side, you can tell if it's that. But again, if you're having problems on the student side, which I can almost guarantee you will happen, it is just simply that they're not on the pointer. Okay, let me go back to where we're at. Any questions on these types of ideas? Viewing multiple screens, copying, pasting, snipping, clipboard history, one of my favorite things. Copying and pasting, fill in the blanks, anything? Nope, we're good? Okay. Okay, so one of the things that I know we want students to be is we want them to be reflective learners. And this is where I feel like I've been able to really help students using Classkick. So one thing that you can do is you can add a reflection or goals part to the end of their assignment. So real quick, I'm going to pause. Deborah, if they're on Chrome and they say that they don't have a toolbar, that's usually they just need to refresh. That does happen from time to time. I don't think I've had kids say that when it's been on the iPad, but most of the time that I've had that happen where a kid says that they don't have a toolbar is just that they have to refresh. And worst comes to worst, you just have to have them like exit out and re-enter again. So you can have them do reflections or goals at the end of an assignment. Oh, go ahead. Somebody have a question? No? Okay. So you can have them do reflections or goal settings at the end of assignments. Remember, you can actually export their individual answers. So sometimes on tests, like I'll ask kids, like, how do you think that you did? And some kids think that they did good when they got a 70%, you know, or a 50%. And that's good to know. I don't always want to have to read each individual page, like going through here, but having them do to like list like their goals or their perceptions kind of can help me even when I'm conferencing with them. You can also have them review their old work. And one way that I get them to review their old work is that I'll just like add an extra box that's worth points, where I basically make them go back into their old assignment and view whatever, and they then have to put some type of response in that box so that they only get their full points once they've done that. Another thing, we know that a lot of times we will give students all this wonderful feedback about all the things that they know that they need to do, and they don't read it, right? But one thing that you can do is when you go to give them a test back, keep those answer keys toggled off. Keep the score toggled off, and they'll still be able to see your stickers or whatever you put in. And if you do that and ask them to, like, you know, reflect on it or give them a minute, they'll be much more likely to read your feedback. And you can kind of control just I just want to know what grade I get. I don't really care about anything that you've taken all this time to give them a lot of feedback on. You can also duplicate pages to make a correction. So if you have a 10-page test or something, you can duplicate, you know, page 1 would now become page 1 and 2. So if they got it wrong, then they would have to do the same problem, but on like the next sheet of paper. And you would still have their, you know, you could still like have exported there. You can't freeze like one page, but you would still have a place where you could have their original work versus their new work. So that's something that you can do just to kind of help students be more reflective in what they're doing. Does anybody else have ideas of ways that you get kids to be metacognitive or just accountable for their work? Anybody have ideas or suggestions?
I don't have an idea. Well, maybe you can pass it on to Classkick. But
Yeah.
Desmos very recently, with their beta feedback, put it like because that was the same issue in Desmos, the Desmos AB. So now you can see, it's kind of like a read receipt. So that you can see when the kids have actually read your feedback.
Yes.
So could that be something that Classkick, maybe you can pass on to Classkick so that there could be like a read receipt? Because that would be really nice.
No, definitely. You know, Classkick is always looking at different like types of features. It always just takes a matter of like how on their prioritizing of things. Because I actually have a spreadsheet that I keep between myself and them of suggestions, and it's there's a lot. So yeah, that's definitely something that they could adapt. As I said, for now, like one of the things that you could do is you could have them, you could enter like another box next to it. And have them, you know, you wouldn't necessarily know what time that they looked at it, but there's like a way that you can kind of, please show your students the teacher view. My kids, I constantly, even a lot of times I will be, if I'm having on a certain page, like I'll just ask the kids, I'll say, you know, I'll just jump onto somebody's page and we'll look at what their work looked like. Or I'll even just say, okay, well, what's the first step? And I'll just have the other I'll have the student basically be writing down the work when I'm just dictating over. So, okay, well, the first step is to combine like terms, and I'll just show them, you know, somebody's screen, Carol's screen, and say, okay, Carol, can you please combine like terms? And we'll watch Carol do the work. I keep my teacher view up a lot. On the screen. I'm not sure about being able to split the screen on iPads. I think Doug might be using iPads as well as being a Mac person. We're kind of, Doug, do you know anything about?
Go ahead.
Do you know if they're able to split the screen on iPad with Zoom?
Not familiar with Zoom. Some of the iPads, the newer ones, have that capability. With different apps, but for the most part, no.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I think it just depends on, there's a lot of different things that depend on the different operating systems, which is going to be hard with this year with so many of our kids using all sorts of different types of devices. Okay, so here's another example of a reflection type of thing that you can give kids. Or at the beginning of the year, you can ask them questions about themselves and export that information. We know that sometimes kids don't have updated information in your Skyward or whatever app that you use to manage student stuff. So a lot of times I will ask them questions and then export the individual responses. Another thing, and this is if you are a tested subject, one thing that I do a lot with my students that is going to be more difficult for me since we're going to be on distance learning, and please know that the kids do have the ability to export their work, which I don't like them always having access to because I don't want them to cheat, right? But they can actually do this. I didn't worry about this as much in my classroom because I was able to only have their assignment active for a specific time and then hide it. So it wasn't as nerve-wracking. But for those of you that are interested in using Classkick to teach test-taking strategies, what I would do is I would have the whole class view up where I could see what everybody is working on, and then I would prompt kids for the type of test-taking strategies that I was wanting them to use. So I would say, and sometimes I would even honestly make up, even if I didn't see a kid using that test-taking strategy, I would say something like, okay, I see, you know, Juan is highlighting important words, and then I see Marissa is eliminating 2 answers. And a lot of times when I would do that, I would see other students would start employing those same test-taking strategies that I wanted them to be doing. And you can do that without it being test-taking, but especially people that still have their states are going to be doing end-of-course exams, trying to run through some of those things really has a large impact. So I'm going to read some questions real quick. Is there a shared page that all students can collaborate For example, I teach stats and we collect a lot of data for which students place maybe their data on a dot plot, which we can use as a class data. So students can, you can put everybody, like you could have a basic account where you just call it like class, and everybody could go in and sign in using the name class and then put their data in like that. And then everybody would have access to the data there. That's like a way to kind of like do groups, and I haven't done it with like a huge group, but another thing that I'll do is that if there's a whole bunch of people putting in data, I will just screen clip it and put it on, like, you know, almost have like 2 Classkick assignments open at the same time, and just like screen clip and put them all together, if that makes sense. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question there very well, Kimberly. So last year there were several times that it was not working. What was not working, Deborah?
I think the site was down like a lot of times during the spring, and you know, you'd go on Facebook and they would say, yeah, we're working on it, we're working on it. Have they?
I hope so. I hope that we're there all the way up. I mean, honestly, I use a lot of different platforms, and it was amazing. Like Google Classroom was going down in certain ways. Quizlet, I was getting emails from so many different ed tech companies. I know that they have spent most of the summer on making sure that things don't crash. But we're not going to really be able to know until there's thousands and thousands of kids on. I know that they've revamped their server capability quite a bit. You know, and unfortunately, it's just one of those things where we're going to just, I think that they've done a lot of work on it. I can't guarantee, though, that it's going to just be perfect, partially because just every ed tech company has just gotten hit so hard. I don't even know of one that didn't have massive problems at some point in the spring. So I am hopeful, though. I know that they've been really working on their infrastructure. So I'm hoping it'll be working. All right. Let me see. There's only a little tiny bit left. So another thing that we can do with our students for sharing student work is something that you can encourage kids to do is take screen clips of kids that do a really good example on their work. So that Windows Shift S, if you just put that into like a file or something where you can show other kids, that is something really, really powerful. And you'll find that kids will start wanting to do, you know, whatever habits that you want. In my classroom, I actually print out examples of like Classkick, you know, like a certain page of kids that did a good job. I also will take screen clips of like maybe a kid, like one student, maybe one kid will solve a problem using the quadratic formula and the other one will solve by factoring, and we can like look at both examples of work and say like, well, which one was quickest, which one is easiest for you to remember, and that type of stuff. So it's just very powerful to be able to see everybody's work all the time and being able to like give kids feedback. And let me see, I can't remember. Yeah, so as far as I am recording the session, and I do have this Google Slides presentation that just has a ton of links from the last time that I did this session, also in the spring. I know somebody was asking about styluses. I use Miko styluses myself for when I'm teaching. Let me, you know, I have like these just like little simple styluses that I use. I know like we're not going to be able to really share things, but a lot of times I'll even buy like one per kid because I'm a crazy person and, you know, I'm a sucker. But if you can get some, so within that like presentation, it has a whole bunch of information from everything from like, I also use like a bamboo tablet to write so that the kids can see like my writing, but I also have some cheaper alternatives that I have used. And there's a whole bunch of other things. So yeah.